Good evening and welcome to, or good morning or whatever, to the 14th episode of Bongversations with Dave, Jay, and
Mhm.
Rick. All the way over, I'm in Australia and he's in Arizona, and we're going to be talking about all sorts of things tonight. But this is, I said, episode 14. Today's in my realm. It's the 10th of November, 2024, and Dave's probably on the 9th of November, which is 9/11. Dave, you know all
9/11.
about that one. 9/11, yeah. All right, man, you
Yeah.
just go ahead and blow us away again as you normally do with whatever you've got. I think the Rockford files might be coming up in this episode, hopefully. So,
Correct. Yeah. The
correct,
Rockford,
fantastic.
and also the 11. I was just noticing that we talked about the 14, and just to keep in mind, if you could break the 14 and just think of it as two sevens, and just at the top of the one, how that, if magnified, you look at it, it can look like a stylized seven. Just keep that pillar idea in mind as we talk
Hmm.
about the Rockford Files, which is to me, it was a show that my dad watched. Right, that's where I first
Yeah,
saw it, and
yeah.
so I knew the music first and foremost, because I didn't start by watching. I just heard the music through the kind of the wall or whatever. You know, so
Yeah.
then, and then after that, so I started. I later, actually, when I was older, I actually watched some of the actual episodes all the way through instead of just catching little bits. And it's a show I liked, and also the writer Stephen J. Cannell. He does a bunch of different stories and books and whatnot, and I enjoyed some of his novels, but within let's say the Rockford Files, which if you go down to the beach there in Malibu, it was filmed at a place called Paradise Cove, and there was an actual the trailer though. Just the trailer. If you ever watch the episodes, you ever see where they're filming from the outside of the door? That trailer was really just that little first bit. All the actual filming you see inside the trailer, of course, is soundstage. Where they're actually
Right,
showing
yeah,
you
of course.
inside. Yeah, because if you ever watch the show, when they're showing you from the inside out, look at the background. You can see it's just a painted backdrop, just like with a
Yeah.
lot of the Andy Griffith
Uh,
show from when they're
uh,
in the
uh,
courthouse. Yeah.
Another illusion of the magic of making TV and movies.
Yeah, so then the two writers I was thinking about on the Rockford Files, there's two. There's Roy Huggins and Stephen J. Cannell. Now, Roy Huggins goes back to the show Maverick, which
Yep.
James Gardner did, and Gardner, which is the idea, and I brought that up to you earlier, which is Bumgardner, or the Ashkenazi name of basically a tree farmer, you know. So then
Oh,
so
interesting. Uh,
yeah so then I'm sorry, go ahead, Rick.
no, so that's interesting.
Yeah, so you have
Very
this
interesting.
idea of a tree culturalist. So then one who then will then give the idea or what fruit is going to be offered to those that pick from that tree, right? So
Mm.
then, so yeah, so I was thinking, and Huggins goes back to the House and American Activities hoax with the communist so-called scare of Hollywood. So the Roy Huggins
Yes.
character goes back to that. So he's
Yep.
a carryover from the generation, and then the Cannell character will be a carryover into this kind of generation. So to talk about the Roy Huggins character, he goes back to The Fugitive. Remember the one-armed man?
Yep. Fantastic show.
So you have you have the doctor um, Kimball, right? Yeah, okay, yeah. So you had Dr. Kimball, who was on the run because they claimed that he had killed his wife, and of course he's saying I'm innocent. It was a one-armed man. Now, if you take the idea of the one arm, you remember that's the idea of the seven or the Zion or the mind. Remember if you had the story
That's
with the bus and the kids'
the
arms,
shape of
yeah,
the arm. Yeah,
yep.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have it's always just that idea that's being placed in the physical realm, whether it be through news story or whether it be through film. TV,
Yeah.
short, because TV shows just short film, format really. And then,
Yeah.
or novel form, reading stories. You're going to be presented with these either the characters in body form to where they talk, or a part of a body as an idea of an act that had happened, right? So then you have to then put to your head, okay, well, what happened? If they never explain to you what happened, 100 people are going to have 100 different stories on how that happened, because they'll fill in the blank, if they think about it that much. So then you have this idea. Yeah. So then you have this idea of he's one of the first kind of man in the wood type stories where you have the different hoaxes, where you have the idea of the boogeyman in the woods, or the second shooter. It's sometimes called. It's the idea of having an idea that's just outside of actual physical manifestation, meaning it didn't actually happen and it's not real, but the idea was placed in front of you. So every detail that's gleaned is in fact cast by imagination.
Is this an archetype, or is this what you call an archetype that they use for the one arm and the?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because it's the idea. Then can you imagine going down to the pub and telling people you got strangled and choked out by a one-armed dude?
Or one-armed man. Yeah. It's like a slightly you get a lot of strange looks for sure.
No,
absolutely. But it was absolutely essential to the story, though, wasn't it? And it was essential to that story.
Yeah, and in fact, if you look at the old version versus like the newer version where you had old
Harrison Ford,
Harrison Ford in there, when he's running around, that kind of more that really focused more on the artificial arm side of the story, more so than the older one did. The
TV show, the
TV show. Go ahead.
Huge show. Back in the day, that was a huge show. People were on the edge of their seats because it was a continuation episode. Each show was a different, same story but a different episode. Yeah.
It reminded me a lot of how Incredible Hulk was laid out, with David Banner walking away at the end of each episode, hitchhiking with a bag.
That was the Incredible Hulk wasn't filmed around Malibu area, was it as well?
Oh, it was filmed. It was filmed all around the area. Oh yeah,
fantastic.
Oh yeah, for sure. A lot of it is, and I was thinking now also about the Roy Huggins character, just to kind of close him out. He then ties in with another show called the Hunter, which was just another. It's it's a way of teaching men how they're supposed to think of how the police act. It gives this false narrative, and it also gives, through the Rockford files, which I'm about to get to now, because that's where Huggins, I should say, and Canal come together, is because they write that, and Canal also did the A-Team and Renegade, 21 Jump Street.
Oh man, he was incredible. I guess he's still alive. Incredible.
So the Rockford Files is their connection. So then the Rockford Files, if you look at what Jimbo was a lefty. What political so-called lefty, meaning that he was for so-called left-leaning or communist ideas. That's where Huggins, who is the communist in this whole play, comes in. So those ideas are put in, because you remember this whole place, this whole realm is being pushed towards a one world system, or an antichrist system. So therefore, these characters or these gatekeepers are being put into the narrative
to gently move your views, or the American public's, over to for sure.
So Canal is part of Sigma Chi fraternity.
Which university? Right? Which university was that?
He was with journalism at the University of Oregon.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, and then I should say Huggins was also a PhD of poli-sci at UCLA. Now,
Okay.
poli-science is simply the idea of changing one's mind or changing someone else's, their mind. It's the idea of it's politics. It's the idea of casting a story of doubt or envy. They're getting this, you're not getting that.
Yeah.
They're gonna
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
you. That type of idea,
Yeah.
and how to use that against the person. Now, so you have a political science guy, a PhD, and a journalist guy who's a newscaster getting together to offer you this show.
Create. Yeah.
To create a character who in fact lives like a freaking slob, quite honestly.
In a caravan.
It's actually in a rundown trailer on the park, and it's not that it's just a trailer in the park. It's just it's in shambles. It's a mess. All right.
Yeah.
Nothing's working. He's always broke. He's got Angel as a friend who's constantly bumming him for money. So it's not really offering a great mindset for the so-called man at the time, because he's supposed to be this ladies' man as well, right?
Yeah.
So you see, and that's one of the funniest things, Rick. Yeah, if you watch one of the first episodes, some of the writing is terrible, and that's why I want to kind of talk about how these writers, how they're not very good, but the story is still the best that's given to you. Meaning that TV and movie and all that, you're subject to what's offered to you. So these are not the best actors and the best scripts and the best movies you've ever seen. It's just that they might be the best ones that you have been given access to. Is a better way to put it, because the writing in some of this stuff is horrible. So he goes into.
There's no one famous. Apart from those two, there's no one famous. Sorry, go.
Yeah. So he goes into this. This is just to jump to a different episode first. Yeah, this is on the pilot episode, and just to tell you how bad the writing was, he goes into this Hollywood bar, and they show they cut to the stage, and the stage has this puppy show, basically, where this puppy's jumping through hoops, and there's a lady in like a ruffled dress. It's a ridiculous carnival show. And then he goes up to the bar and he says, "Hey Jimmy, give me my usual." So I'm thinking to myself, wait, are you expecting me to believe that Jim Rockford goes to this cheesy bar as usual? I said, I'm not buying that, man. So it's just like if you pay attention to the actual some of the dialogue, it's very corny. So back to the idea of this fraternity. So Sigma Chi. Just think about Sigma. The idea of Sigma is the idea of a summation. So you're summoning. All right. If you're dealing with math, it's a summation. It's or a standard deviation. All right. So you're dealing with a summator and an operator. So these are basically a newscaster or a movie or an actor. They're presenting you a character or an alphabet, quite literally, an alphabet, a character. If they say that this person plays this character and you say that I won't accept another person to play that character because that person is the alphabet. They are all possibilities of that character. It has become in your mind cast as that, meaning that you're right. So some will say, "Oh, I don't accept this as a James Bond. I only accept this particular actor as James Bond." Right?
Yeah.
So you'll see they've lost focus of that. It's just a character being played. They've actually attached a personality to it, meaning a life to it, because the chi is the X. The X. It's the life force.
CHI.
Yeah. CHI. It's also the 22nd letter. So in the Greek, because sigma being the 18th, chi being the 22nd, what does 2 + 2 = 4? The idea of the door or the Dalet, the life force or the X. That's why what's his nuts redid his Twitter to X.
Elon Musk.
Because it's the life force. It's the I. It's the idea of, in electricity or electronics, it would be called reactance or potential reactance. The idea of what your reaction to the sigma is going to be, the summation.
Mm.
So then the sigma, so then they are the ones who are creating this. Do you see? That's the name of their fraternity. So they're going to offer that to the so-called public or to the goy. Now, then
So it's
other,
not just
yeah,
it's not just an old TV show about a private eye. It's got a whole lot
no,
of deep. It's pushing the public into a more of a left of centre belief, very gently with a very likable actor, James
correct,
Garner. So
correct,
keep
yeah,
going, but it's yeah,
correct, yeah, you got it right. And then shows are presented to the public and tested and offered, and if the public likes it, then they will continue to feed
6 years
verses to
of it.
them. Yeah, they'll
Yeah.
continue. Yeah, they'll continue. So then you have Brad Pitt is part of the same fraternity. David Letterman, Tom
Wow,
Selleck. Now Tom Selleck, if
interesting.
you remember, Tom Selleck shows up in Rockford
Very last episodes. The
as
very last
Lance
episodes.
White,
Yep. Yep.
Private Eye Lance White.
But believe it or not, 6 months before he took on the role as Magnum PI, he appears in the Rockford Files. So it's
Yeah,
obviously a
well,
continuation of the same story. Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, they had. In fact, they even did a crossover episode where Rockford goes over to Hawaii at the end.
Oh, really?
And Rocky goes. And here's the problem about the writing, Rick, is not to be picky, but in that episode, when Rocky's old man goes over, or I'm sorry, when Rockford old man Rocky, his dad, goes over with him to Hawaii.
No,
you're
that's
supposed
Noah
to,
Berry.
yeah, you're supposed to forget that earlier, a couple seasons earlier, he had been to Hawaii already. But in the second time, he claims to have not been there yet. I was like, what are you talking about? You were already there a couple seasons ago. So it's like, so they forgot people were paying attention, I guess. So
you pay attention. You pay attention, that's for sure.
Yeah. I was like, oh, John Wayne's also another member of that crew.
Sigma.
John Wayne. Yeah.
Interesting. There's a lot of
Woody Harrelson.
Similar. They're all and you're right, they're all very left of centre people too, to be in there as well. Very likable people, though, all of them. Extremely popular people.
Yeah, and it's also the idea of, if you look then, Rick, at how is an idea manifest or shown in occult kind of ideas. You would have to go to the tarot card called the Magician. Now, the Magician would be the second card, or the first trump, I guess is how they would call it. But it's the Magician who's standing in usually the Baphomet pose, basically one arm up and one arm down, and looks like a figure eight above his head in a horizon or a horizontal position. That's important. The reason it's important is because the eight's in a position above his head, almost like a hat. When in fact, and what that means is that one is in control of the power being cast. What happens to those that fall under that power is that 8 turns 90 degrees, and now it's straight up and down. Now they're running up and down like a signpost or like a barber's pole. Do you see how if you spun the 8? So that's quite literally moving this into the idea of the Sigma Chi, or the idea of summoning, the operator summoning a life force or a power. So he's summoning a character. And then that character, if you like who that character is, I want to be like that character, you're going to then start to mimic or act like that character, and then start to mirror what this character puts out as being the way to act cool or be cool, is to say this or to believe that.
Yep. Definitely. Yep. It's interesting too that you mentioned, you bring in the occult into the word, that the production. I'll give you it was USA, 1974 to 1980. That's 6 years. 114 episodes. That's number 6 at 60 minutes long. So they're right at the top of 666 of the production there of the Rockford Files. It's hidden in plain sight.
Right. And then, so I was also thinking that if you go to an episode. I wanted to go to the kind of the idea, the number of the 4-2 idea, right,
Yes,
or the
yes,
6
yes,
or the
yes.
42. And if you go to the fourth season, the 20th episode, you have the Prisoner of Rosemont Hall, where his nephew is held hostage and whatnot. I won't give too much of the story away if you haven't seen it, but at the Rosemont College, basically. And so then they have this story where where you have kind of the Middle East intrigue, the prince or the princess, I should say, and then you have the idea of a teacher, kind of, playing slap and tickle with the student, in this case the nephew that goes missing, and however, as part of that, Rockford goes undercover as a traveling secretary, and he goes to the Cairo Zeta house. Cairo, you hear that? Cairo. The idea of it's a hidden code, because it's actually, because when they greet each other, you'll hear that they say Phi Alpha. Now, Phi Alpha is literally it's a Jewish fraternity. So then you have the idea of Phi Alpha, or the idea of from a place, brightness, or a brightness from a place. So then a concealed place. So the idea of a concealed light. So I found that interesting, because if you look at in this episode, when they answer the door, the pledge is holding a sign that says XPZ. Now, if you reduce that, you can get it down. You can get it down to it's going to come down to 26 blah 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 21 to 3. So you can reduce it down to 3. It's a 21 number if you add it all up. Now, remember I talked to you earlier? Yeah, I talked to you earlier about the idea of the 21 or the 3 numbers being a hoax. HOAX also reduces down to 21 or 3, just like XPZ. So you see then that if you pay attention to the code of this place, no matter, even through these different characters, let's say Stephen J. Cannell in this case and Roy Huggins in this case, that the code of this place will present itself if you pay attention, and you'll see it through. And then this, guess what, Rick? This is gonna go through now all of John Wayne, all of Woody Harrelson, all of Tom Selleck, all of David Letterman, all of Brad Pitt, because they are all under the same influence. And then if you then go to these, and then if you go to these different fraternities and start to look at who's attached to them, you'll see that each college might have a specific. Do
you join? Are you asked? Are they recruited, or do they ask to join these frats?
Well, I'll tell you this much right now, Rick. In the United States, they give you placement tests quite often as you're growing up.
Early.
Yeah. And what happens is I kept getting placed in the class below, and then they're like, you take these placement classes, and they're like, where's my place? And they're like, well, it's out the door. And you're like, out to the door. Yeah, keep going. Bye. That's where my place was. And then, but they'll place you. You'll become gifted and whatnot, and they'll pump you up that way. And then you have, just so you know, you have the 7 ideas that are going to be spread through all of these different Antichrist systems. And it's going to be the idea of, these are the 7 ideas. You're going to have grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. Now, within each one of those, you're going to have different universities that might specialize in that type of thing. Within those universities, you're going to have different frat houses. However, those frat houses are going to be like a mushroom attached through a network to a main house somewhere.
Yeah.
So then, and then guess what? Some of these fraternities are going to be more sports oriented. some are going to be more mind oriented, blah blah blah, or spiritual oriented, whether it be religious sided and whatnot. So anyway,
are you there?
So yeah, anyway, so you have that idea. So those are the 7 ideas, or those will be the so-called the common denominator between all these different schools and whatnot. So you just need to decide at what you're looking at. If you're going to decide, okay, I'm going to investigate the pharmaceutical industry, blah blah blah. You go ahead and you look for those colleges that are going to specialize in that, and then find these different fraternities, find out the different alumni, and then you'll find out what positions they're in, and see how that system, just like a spider's web, is constantly being cast, and it gets if some of it gets blown away, some of it goes away, it just gets filled in with the next. Then what they call in football and sports with all the meatheads, the next man up mentality. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
You're the great teammate until next man up. It's all just meathead mentality.
Yeah. So, but it continues the lineage in the same patterns. I mean, so when one falls, another one's there to replace them every time.
Right.
And then they have a common belief system.
Yeah, and then you just create subgroups to subgroups to subgroups for the
network.
The so-called offspring.
It's just a network, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny they call it a network and a spider's web. They're all the same thing, aren't they? It's
like Charlotte's Web.
Strands, but all. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, for Charlotte's
Web, another good movie.
Remember the Charlotte was the name of the ship that Nicolas Cage found the little roller code on in the National Treasure movie. I've
got to watch that again.
Yeah, the Charlotte was that was the name of the wooden ship was Charlotte. Just so you know.
Yeah. So interesting. Always interesting.
Yeah. So then what I wanted to, and that's what I wanted to bring up about that. I didn't want to get too far down with the idea of. Well, I should say this though. Now, what to go farther back with the Sigma Chi fraternity is that if you go back to its 7 founders, they're all Freemasons. Now the idea of the Freemason, it's all, you look them up, they're all Freemasons. They all have Freemason ties. Therefore, the root of that Sigma Chi is Freemasonic. That's just the way that goes, and it also goes in when you look at, and because you look at what's shared and what's written. So with the in the episode "The Prisoner of Rosemont Hall," when Rockford goes in and he's playing, and he goes into the Cairo Zetas, they say Phi Alpha as a direct announcement to each other of recognition. That is a specific representation of a Jewish frat or fraternity, meaning that is then the root. And then, now this is the idea of the Ashkenazi type, or the false Jew type, the ones who with their father Satan rule this place at this current time. That's what I'm speaking about, just to make sure that nobody gets sideways and forgets what the point of
telling
all
it
this.
like it is. Telling it like it is, Dave J.
What's the point of all this? Well, the point is to know the enemy. And the enemy is very recognizable in everything it does, because it's all, there's not a lot of creativity, Rick.
Well, they're obsessed with rocks, and that's what you keep getting rocks and stones thrown, all the time. Rockford Falls has got it in the name itself.
Stones, cubes, bricks.
Yep.
Rocks and stones and cubes and bricks.
Yep.
Yeah, I was also thinking, what was I thinking about the Phi Alpha, as far as being well, that's just the idea of the brightness of the light too. So that to me is because the Rockford Files also pushed the Holocaust narrative, the Holocaust narrative. It pushed that in several episodes. It pushed uh, it pushed the idea of situational kind of honesty several times.
Yeah, well, he was
It
no
also,
clean skin either. He
yeah,
wasn't what you call a typical all-American guy.
yeah,
So you know,
yeah,
and so you
yeah.
can see they were going to push agendas through this show. As this show is not just as we've just said, not just your old afternoon TV show. There's a lot of stuff being put at you through these television shows.
Well, you want to
Yeah.
know real quick, like little thing. Well, what happens with metal is if you bend it back and forth, at some point it snaps because
Hmm.
it's gonna. So then, this is also the idea of the logic loop. Now, I want to walk you
Yeah.
through this idea first, and again, then give you a story from one of the little back and forth from the Rockford Files. So then, if you take the idea of a triangle, you can imagine a triangle in like a dinner bell, a
Okay.
triangle. Now, if you put one, tip to tip on top of it, it looks like an hourglass, right?
Hmm.
Right. So then, if you draw a line directly through the middle of it, you can see it. It would look like it's being reflected. It's very
Yeah.
simple. So if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you're back at the center line. And guess what? The only other place you can go from 6 is to 7. So that's called the black. That's called a white or a black swan event, because 6 to 7, 7 to 8. The idea of becoming. So then, are you going to then go into the presence of mind? 6 into 7. Are you gonna have the presence of mind to continue? 7, 8, 9, and then guess what? It continues and it collapses into itself. Or are you going to go ahead and drop it, let it go? So then, if you then continue to go forward, that then becomes your crossing, your life force, your chi, or your reactance, which we talked about earlier. So
Yeah,
then
interesting.
again, yeah,
Sigma chi, and chi with the energy system as well.
yeah, yeah. So then that's then becomes the idea of your fulfillment as well, which I find
Hmm.
interesting. Yeah, and then because if you have the oh, did I tell you about the movie that what was the name of that darn thing? No, I forgot. I was going to tell you the name of the movie. Oh, Conclave. Did I tell you
Yes,
about
no, you
this week?
told me to say
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
a new movie. Yeah.
yeah. It's a new movie. Because I kind of was thinking I could fit, because with the Rockford Files, you see then how the writers then are offering you kind of hidden ideas, and the manifestations of their ideas are from kind of, they're not even from hidden places. They're from places that you already kind of knew. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
those guys again. Oh, those
Yeah.
guys again. Because the first guy, let's say Huggins in this case, he was also in the civil service, and the civil service is nothing more than the idea of those that spread bad ideas. They're
Yeah.
like, they're government Jesuits. Really, they just go
Government
around and
Jesuits. Yeah.
yeah, they're just government Jesuits. And
Okay.
then you also have the idea of the canals, which are nothing more than journalists who spread false and or news or ideas that then of course become someone's idea of what their behavior should be, right?
Yeah.
So then, to move then to another topic
Yeah.
completely,
Go,
because
man.
that kind of runs the course of how, if to me, if I looked at, because I was wondering why some of the writing seemed to kind of hit, like, it wasn't very good. So that's when I looked into who was writing it, and then decided, it's like, where are they getting, what is their root, and what is their uh their base
Intention.
behavior, their
Mm.
base, like, because everything's computer. So what is their base code based on? And then I look at their character and say, oh, it's obvious that they're so-called communists, whatever that is, but that's nothing more than an atheist or a Satanist at the end of it, by the
Yeah.
time you get through it. And then that spiritual idea moves forward through the script, and then you just have a new generation, which then, instead of using the idea of mind warfare at the printed level, they're going to mind warfare at the visual level through visual news and through visual presentation of TV, movies, etc., and so forth. And being based on a true story, It's Scooby Doo's a true story, but it's not real. It's a true story.
That's right.
Though. Yeah. I can tell you the first episode and then what the story was, and that's the true story if you went and checked it each time. But that doesn't mean that it actually happened.
No.
Oh, and so then I was thinking to myself, there's another Rockford Files now that just came to my mind. Another one that it's really right after this one. So this would be season 4, episode 20. So season 4, episode 21 was the House on Willits Avenue. Now, the House on Willits Avenue is a 2-part show. And it showed you a couple things. It showed you data collection of all your personal data, and it also showed you the building of underground data centers. Which
interesting. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that episode.
Yep.
Funny you should say that. Yeah.
And remember the guy who kept getting the alarms looked like a Peter Brady wannabe with the permed hair. I kept thinking, that was the thing back then with that permed hair. But yeah, and then remember the CEO bad guy had almost like the kit car where he had the lie detector meter in there.
Yeah, there's a lot. That'd be worth looking at that episode. Because you're right, 2-parter. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the only drawback to that is it has Brockelman in there, and Brockelman is a character they kind of brought in. It's like he was probably the nephew of the producer, so like give him a part. Give my guy a part. Yeah. So his name is Brockelman.
Kojak's younger brother getting a job in the for Kojak.
Yeah, so Brockelman. I look at Brockelman as being, speaking of Scooby Doo, I look at Brockelman as being the Scrappy Doo. When they brought Scrappy Doo on, I'm bouncing. I'm out.
Jumping the shark.
Yeah, no, Scrappy Doo, that's too much. Yeah, jumping the shark. Yeah, Scrappy Doo's too much. Scrappy Doo's a bridge too far. That's for sure.
They all did it though. Remember the Flintstones, when once they bring in an alien into the suit, they had that little strange alien with the motorbike hat on type thing. And that they've run out of ideas, and they have to introduce space into how could you possibly get space into a Flintstones thing? But they did. They got an alien in there. So,
because there's also the idea of controlled demolition, and this happens even in product. The reason being is it's a psychological thing, because if you just get left hanging a few times, you might walk away. However, if you walk away, you did that on your own regard, meaning that the show got so bad you just walked away from it. So you don't really have any, you just, it ran its course. It's best that it went away. However, if it's still going and it still has you and they just leave you on a cliffhanger, then you're pissed off. You might not come back. Yeah. So people don't want somebody pissed off. So if they know a show is only going to run a certain amount, shows can only go so long. They're gonna control demo. If it's a franchise, they want to have the name still not be mud down the road. So it's always a business decision. Everything's a business choice. This is all a business realm. So then, back to Conclave. I was going to get to the Conclave idea, and
it's interesting.
Yeah, the Conclave idea now is a movie about the Pope idea. If the Pope croaks, and then they're gonna bring another character up. Now this, I want to say, relates to Revelation 19. Specific part, because it's the idea of your intentions being put on paper, your intentions then being counted, and then the proof of that intention being burned. All right, and then the color of the smoke signifying a specific result, and in this case, black smoke being no Pope, white smoke meaning that they decided on someone. Yeah. Now I wanted to read part of Revelation 19 to you. And it's
just
because if you listen to this part, you're going to say, Revelation 19:2, for the true and righteous are his judgments, for he hath judged the great whore. Now the whore, if you look at the word whore, you can also see hero in there. Because this idea is, it's not that just the world's being judged, or the idea of the nations are being judged. It's the idea of the individuals who are being judged. So those heroes, those people who thought they could do it themselves. So then people in heaven, so the great whore, which did not corrupt the earth with her fornication, and hath avenged the blood of his servants at her hand. Now blood also, if I'm sorry, are you still there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Don't worry. Okay, I don't interrupt. I don't interrupt when I'm learning things.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, no worries. So I was just thinking that it's the idea that you have to realize, if you're looking at these different passages, that, and then let me get to the third part, and then, or the third verse, and then it'll make sense. And then they said, hallelujah, and her smoke rose up forever and ever. Her smoke. So the idea of the smoke, and it's also the idea if you put meat on the barbecue, the smoke rises. Any type of burn, the essence of what you burned is going to rise first. It's going to rise.
Holy smoke! Holy smoke!
Yeah, holy smoke. The idea. So yeah, and then so you have the idea. So then you have that idea within Revelation 19. Remember, 19 is of course the idea of the 10 when added, or the input output. So that then what is that input equals the output. So what did that thing that got burnt? So within the so-called movie Conclave, it's almost like a mystery thriller where you have the different characters. In this case, this guy, you have Cardinal Lawrence.
Who's in it? Is there anyone?
Ralph Fiennes, Stanley Tucci.
Right. Okay, some big
John
stars.
Lithgow.
Yeah, okay, right. It's a big movie. That's a big budget.
Yeah. So then you have these different cardinals who have these different skeletons in the closet. And they specifically, I won't give away the real big twist ending, because but if you're paying attention to kind of the way of the world these days, you'll kind of know what happens. So what happens is the four main cardinals are the ones you think that are kind of vying for the position. Each get kind of taken out upon their own accord by just their shenanigans being laid out for everyone to see.
It sounds extremely realistic.
Yeah, and it happens through just people being brought and placed before. It's interesting how they did it. I won't tell you how, but what it centers around the idea of a cardinal who is brought in, who was made a cardinal secretly. It's the idea of a cardinal who is in a so-called rough spot of the world, who gets made a cardinal under the table. They're still they hold the position, but they were not made public until a certain date, right? Yeah. So then there's a specific character that he shows up, and he's from Kabul, Afghanistan, right? And he's been some other place, but he's Mexican. And what's interesting about this is that I don't even want to tell you like the second twist ending, but you can almost see it from here what happens with him. So you have the four main ones who are going out, and you have this fifth kind of, real nice, everything's perfect, he says the right things.
Great cast. Just looking at those three, some fantastic acting.
Yeah, and then so just expect a very modern day ending for sure. And in fact, I would suggest that if you want pre-programming this would be one that you're looking at, because I'll just kind of speak to the fact that the Olympics, this past Olympics, also made a big deal about certain types of characters.
Oh my god! They did in the opening ceremony. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So then just so you'll kind of see who becomes Pope and the twist ending if you watch the film.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, so I would suggest you watch that, and just know this though, that these guys are nothing more than, that's the Babylonian priest class with their fish mouth hats. Yeah,
Fish heads and dresses.
yeah, fish
Never
heads and
trust anyone with a
dresses.
fish head and a dress.
And so I would want to ask these first. I would want to ask these so-called cardinals. I would say, why is it that you're having these other human men dress you? Or are you not able to dress yourself? So what do you do? What do you? I mean, at what point did you let it go so far that you have people dressing you in elaborate costumes, and you didn't at some point say, "Stop! This obviously isn't the freaking right thing to do." You know, at some point you should have stopped a long time ago, man.
Go,
But
hey, man,
I'm like even giving you. It's like at some point people. At some point people have to realize and say, oh, those people don't know what they're doing. They're not followers of Christ. You must know that. Just look at what they're doing.
Oh no, yeah, for sure, yeah, and look, I just looked at it logically as a younger person, and I knew enough about, because we had Bible studies at school, and so don't worship graven images and things like that, and Jesus's message was sitting under trees and speaking to the public like that. And you look at these churches with gold everywhere, huge silly hats and dresses, and giant images of graven images everywhere. And I thought, that can't be the same, right? That can't be the right place to go. Well, that was just my logic.
Here's the other.
That was my logic.
Yeah. Here's the other issue.
Yeah.
If you look at the so-called the idea of the presented cross, they have a cross hanging on there. Like, what are you guys scared on the cross?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So what did you take a scarecrow down? Because what are you doing? What are you saying? Because they're celebrating death.
A screaming man. A screaming man.
Because anyone who's fallen places, they're falling. That's God. Therefore, that's life itself. You're not worshiping death. You're not worshiping some man, and you're certainly not worshiping a scarecrow or cross. It's ridiculous, man. So then I'm looking at this stuff. I'm like, it's like, so even at that point, you should see something wrong. But then when you just see the extravagance of this, it's quite interesting. And then you'll see that also what takes out a lot of these different characters. It's quite literally just greed, just simple. Yeah, just simple, like, and just stupid greed too, like meaningless greed. It doesn't mean anything because here's the thing. Because if you presented yourself as a certain character, where are you going to go to hide to be this other thing and spend all this money that you have? Where do you do all that? Yeah. You can't do it. You're trapped. So you're like the guy on the Twilight Zone. Remember where he goes up to so-called heaven, quote unquote heaven, and he goes out to the nightclub, he does all this, he shoots pool and he can never lose, and he gets tired of winning all the time, and then at the end the old man says, "What made you think that this was heaven?"
There's some
and then he just laughs.
Episodes.
Yeah, he just laughs at the camera and walks away. Yeah. You know, because so then these people realize it's like, if you pay attention, if you look and look at these different characters, and if they're acting ridiculous, then they're ridiculous. If they're acting if they're costumed in ridiculous garb, then they're ridiculous. It's the equation is that simple. That's how simple the equation is. Right?
I totally agree.
So Rick, I was going to say, and here's something very interesting, is that in the episode of The Prisoner of Rosemont Hall, the one we were talking about, where Rockford was pretending to be the secretary, when the Middle Eastern guys are hanging out on the University Avenue in the limousine, and the security cop, the bad guy of the show, shows, and he's redheaded, by the way, and he knocks on the glass. They open it up and they say, "Oh, we're looking for the football. We're football fans." And he goes, "Oh, okay. You're going to want the box office." our first game is Stanford. Now, what's interesting about that is Stanford's a college in California. It's Northern California. However, what's interesting about that is that in 1966, which you will remember as year one from Rosemary's Baby,
Yes.
Stanford
Yes.
also then boycotted or dethroned Sigma Chi due to the so-called whites only.
Oh, right. Okay. That was that.
Right. So then you
that
see
era.
how then they create, not only do they create the narrative, but then they create the specific time to where they start to change the narrative. So do you see then 1966, or the idea of year one, then the idea of Stanford, which is really an egghead school. It's a academic school. They're going to then change the idea of from white to black. And remember, that idea is the idea of 2 to 1, which is 3, which is 12, 21. The idea we've talked about earlier, which is the idea of Chi Rho Zeta, which was the name of the fictional fraternity at Rosemont College in this episode, by the way. Now, you'll also notice that in the first, or in that episode, it also had the idea of the Middle Eastern character being held captive and then being released, which is also at the same point in time happening with the idea of the Indian or the Middle Eastern character becoming more powerful, or becoming becoming into the master position in current so-called society.
Of the East.
So that's a current idea right now going on, or a 3, or a ring, or an idea, right? So then that to me is how you see, and then what keeps these characters going is just that, like Shane Scully novels is the Connell's books. They're mediocre at best. All right, mediocre at best. But the fact is that you're a made man. You get your books get put on the shelf. So they're going to be the books that you're going to see at the grocery store. You know, the same few authors that you can get, that
Pulp
they're
Fiction.
pumping their junk out.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. So, and then after a while, they just kind of become a character, meaning that books get released under their name.
Is it like Hammer, Arm and Hammer, or the Hammer detective novels that got knocked out?
Oh yeah, well yeah. Oh, the Arm and Hammer, the kind of communist idea. Because they have baking soda with the Arm and Hammer.
I'm Matt Hammer. I'm thinking of. It was one of those constant detective memes or archetypes back in the day. Yeah. Fantastic.
Right, and then Oh well, now let me go back to then close this with the. Remember, I was going to tell you why I went on this whole little meander, was to get back to the Becker. Remember Lieutenant Becker? Or maybe you don't, but he was the lieutenant that at the. He started out as a sergeant, but he was with Rockford would interact with him at LAPD. He'd give him the inside scoop. Well, Becker. In one episode, this little shady bastard, he's in the break room with a clothes hanger, wiggling the vending machine, pulling out free beans and weenies. and he's like, "Oh, hey Rockford, what do you want?" And Rockford's beef stew. And then guess what? Rockford never even ate. He threw it in the garbage at the end of the scene. I'll just have you know. So then what happens is that the vending machine guy comes in, and you see this in the background of one of the last scenes. They have the main scene going on, but in the background he's walking by. He's like, "Hey, no, there's some stuff missing." And the guy's like, "These are police. They'd never steal nothing." I mean, but then they show you the cop breaking the rules, literally committing theft in a police station. And then it's just laughed off. So that's the tensile strength thing I told you about, with the metal being bent back and forth. At some point, it just snaps. It's like, what do you mean these guys are doing this, and yet they're claiming that you can't do this? So it just, even if it's not direct tension, to the person who's paying attention, in their mind, they're like, that wasn't right. So it causes a splinter. And remember, I told you that splinter has power, because as the person thinks about it, if they ruminate or they stew on it, guess what happens? It's like oatmeal. It just fills up their head.
Interesting.
Right?
Good analogy.
Mm-hmm. I do like some oatmeal, though.
It's good for you, man. It's good for you. Well, do you want to move on from the part of the TV shows? Because I think, I think you can talk about something more relaxing, perhaps.
Something more relaxing. The last part of this. Oh yeah, I was actually loading up some stuff.
Have you been out shopping? Shopping?
I went to the shop earlier. And what's so nice here, Rick, is you just go to the shop, you go up to the register, they say, "Hey, how you doing? What you up for?" And my usual answer is, "I'm here for a zip," which means an ounce. I say, "I'd like to get a zip." I say, "Dealer's choice." But then this time I said, I'm in the mood for some wax. And the guy says, "Oh, well, that's very nice, because I have a few choices for you." And he showed me some lamb's bread. I'm just opening it now just to reminisce with you. So it's kind of like a dry crumble wax, very nice quality, smells delicious, and it's going to be. This is something that you drip onto really any type of green bud if you want. You can even drip it into coffee. You could even drip it into butter. Yeah, as long as you can dissolve it. You just don't need you don't need much, Rick. What they usually do is they'll issue them in half-gram or gram containers. You get little glass containers, and so you just need a 0.10 or a tenth of a gram to achieve full liftoff capabilities.
Full liftoff
capabilities achieved at 0.1010 over. And that will get you, that's the full input-output right there, right?
Input-output.
Yeah, the 10, the 10.
Speaking, I noticed something, actually, I'll bring up of interest, the 10. I picked up a book called The History of Masonry in Australia by a guy who is exposing things and lightening it up as well at the same time. He lightens it right up, and but there's a whole lot of these big paintings that the Masonic centres have throughout Australia. These aren't obviously Australian, but they are. Anyway, I noticed on one of them there's a temple, and on the temple there's the logo is a 1 or a L. And the center is a 0 with a dot in the middle of it, and an L, another L on the end, which is what, I'm always on about computers and how we're always knocking out ancient symbols as part of our normal lexicon of language. And LOL is a huge new one from the last, as soon as texting came out. And basically they've got LOL on their temple. It's basically the 11 with a circle in between it and a dot. And I thought you'd be interested or perhaps know something about it. But it's definitely suggesting
to look at that, because it kind of sounds to me like the theta. It sounds to me
like the theta.
It sounds to me like the theta, and that would be
I'll take a photo of it and send it to you.
Yeah, please do, because that would be then the 8th letter.
Well, to me, it looked it could be. So LOL, when you're on a computer, and everyone, kids are, or even myself. Someone says something funny, you go lol, 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 LLL, laugh out loud. Yeah. But in actual fact, laugh out loud. Here it is. I'll take a photo of it right now. But it's definitely lol.
That's awesome. Yeah, because you also have the idea of the extended mark through the circle would be the psi idea, the PHI. The theta is the dot or the line within the circle, or the idea of the 8, or the detail, really. Just the idea of what detail is incorporated. Because remember the 8, the idea of the 3-3 put together in the mirror reflection. Do you also remember this, Rick? Is if you can imagine the 8 as a circle, you can unbend it like a water hose almost, and you can unbend it into a circle. Do you see what I'm saying mentally? Like within your mind, you can, because it's not actually touching. It's like the idea of an infinity loop.
Are you there, Doug?
Yep, I can hear you.
Sorry, I just tried to take a photo and I.
Oh, don't worry about none of that stuff right now. It's not that important right now, Rick.
No. Sorry, I was just I just spotted exactly what I was telling about. But anyway, I thought that was interesting that LOL, and it's also the 10 and 1. The as you've said, the income input output. 1 plus O plus 1. 1 plus O plus 1.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's all over these Masons. Those damn Masons. They got all those symbols everywhere.
Well, it just tells you when you go into if you go to most American towns, at the beginning of the town, there's going to be a welcome to, any town USA, and it's going to have the Rotary Club and all the Mason signs and all the little badges of the different power structure that controls that. They're telling you who they are.
Yeah, we've got them here.
That's nothing more than, it could be gang tags. It's just nicer nicer than graffiti. But it's just as good as a gang tag, meaning that you come into this town.
That's exactly what it is, isn't it? It's exactly what it is. It's telling you
it tells you who runs the city government, who's the police. It tells you who they are already. So so you don't go into that town expecting something different.
That's right. Well, here where I am now, and where I grew up in New Zealand, as soon as you got into town, there's a massive spire, well, not a spire, but a structure, and it had Rotary, Masons, maybe 6. Lions Club, Lions was another one. Or just telling you who runs the town and who you have to talk to if you want to move.
It's like Charlotte's Web. It really is, Rick, because let's just say you have the idea of a net. And you have the idea. Well, I don't. You have people who want to be part of a social group, but they don't want to be part of that kind of a cultish kind of men wearing costumes with their swords and shit. So they're like, okay, we don't want to do that. So okay, you go become part of the Elks, or you become part of this other group or whatever. But however, those other groups are going to keep them occupied in the world of make-believe as well, just not at such an occult level, more at a material level,
Gotcha.
And so it's still going to offer them, as long as they have you in the tent somewhere. They don't care where you're at in the tent. That's why it's a 3-ring circus, because there's 3 rings to keep you busy. If you don't like this, we'll get you this. You don't like this, and you get it's like the 3-card Monte as well. You're trying to figure out which one they're doing. And so boom, they always got the upper hand on you, because guess what? They know the step before you do. That's why you're never going to catch up. Because if you're following someone's book or script, they obviously know it because they wrote it. All right.
That's right.
Oh my goodness. So here's the thing. So if let's just say that if somebody's reading the book that I wrote, it's like if they read something to me, I know what they're saying exactly because I wrote it. So then I can tell you why and for what reason I wrote it. And then you can say, okay, take that logical input, lay it out, and then say, does that make sense now? Yay or nay. What some will do is they'll say, okay, I'll listen, or I know what they're saying up to this point, and then they lost me. Well, then stop where they lost you, set a marker, and get out. Go do whatever study it is you have to do to study and show yourself approved, so that you no longer and continue to be a burden on people who are trying to instruct you. It's that simple. So then, then I hear people say, when something's brought up, "Oh, I've never heard of that. I don't know." Well, then shut up and listen, and you might know. And you might actually hear something and learn something that then you say, "Oh, I'm going to jump forward and take a look at that," and then I can tell you something next week, and I can shut up. Right. Yeah. So it's the idea: if you know something, talk. If you don't know something, be quiet. It's a real simple deal.
Yeah, that's it.
It's a real simple deal.
It's simple if you understand where you under you don't sorry, even the word understand is a weasel word, isn't it?
No,
You're
no words have
under.
magic on me, so don't worry, Rick. Just talk. It's okay. Go for it.
No. Yeah. So if you don't understand your position,
Right.
you are going to be baffled and fooled, and you'll be saying, "I don't know, I don't know," and you're repeating that mantra. Repeating the mantra that's keeping you locked up in your little prison in your head.
Absolutely. Yeah, you'll convince yourself. You'll convince
Well, you've
yourself
told
through
yourself,
the reflection.
I don't know.
You've told yourself that. So, and you are who you believe, obviously, right? So then they're going to stop listening to themselves, and then guess what? They simply exist day in and day out, and they know nothing. I know nothing.
I know nothing. I know nothing. Schultz. Hogan. Schultz said it all. He said it all back then. I know nothing. Yeah. Anyway, Dave, I think on that note, I think we'll wind up another fantastic episode of Bongversations. And we talked about mentioned some waxes before. What was the name of it again? I've never heard of that one before.
Oh, this was lamb's
new ones.
Lamb's bread. No, it's been around for some time. It's one of those kind of ones that. You haven't heard of it before?
Oh well, I'm not. So you're the expert on this on this substance. I'm keen to know about it though. Because you got to know about these things.
Yeah, it's what the reason I guess. Well, here's why that it claims lamb's bread is that it when it grows, certain bud grows kind of more like a cone. This grows kind of knobby, so it kind of looks like the sheep's wool. The end of the sheep's wool. There's little knobs, and then anyway, you break off those little knobs, you crunch it up. It's called lamb's bread or also lamb's breath. And it's a sativa, so it's more of a head lifter, and it helps with anxiety. It also, and here's the thing, and why anxiety is something that it helps with, because a lot of times people have anxiety because they have a lot that they're trying to talk about, and there's only one mouth to speak out of. So they get tied up, and once they start to hear themselves stumble, they start then they actually lose confidence, and they peter out. So what this does, and other similar strains does, is, to me anyway, it allows a storehouse to kind of I can build out quite a bit. Meaning I can lay out like pallets of information. And then I can I can run it through, and even if I decide to go to this other area and tell you something from that pile, I can still come back and remember where I was here before. So no matter how big that gap is, I'll still get back to what I told you I was going to say, even if it was 10 minutes ago. So that's the idea of some people call it meander. It's the idea or a certain way to talk to fill time. And also to properly pace what you put out. Because sometimes if you speak too fast, nobody's going to understand you, and then you've wasted your time. However, if you meander or mead out, like feed out, at a pace and in a way that allows consumption to happen freely, kind of like people that you like the way it's laid out. You like I like the vibe, man. And then that, of course, is going to allow that whatever you're trying to say or impart or to show to get actually out in a true form that they can actually take and test. Because you failed if they hang up and then they forgot what you just talked about. Yeah. If you hang up or they stop listening and then they turn around and within a minute they can't even tell you what was being said, then you failed. The speaker or the teacher did not impart the information properly.
It did not get jettisoned it got jettisoned out of the pupils.
I got inputted, outputted.
Yeah, input and outputted. Yeah.
All right, man. It got Chinese food.
All right, dude. I think we'll
Okay.
wind that up. I haven't even come up with anything magical to listen to yet, but I will. As I'm speaking now, when you listen to this on truthmeats.com, there will be the strains of something appropriate will be coming through, thanks to Joel's incredible mixing skills that he does. And thanks, Joel, for your lovely production on the last episode. We just arrived magically this morning of episode 13 of the Bongversation. And this week's one on the Rockford, the deoccultation of the Rockford files. Who would have thought the Rockford files was full of stuff? Dave J. He's exposed it again. 10 out of 10. 12 out of 10, the Frank score.
Thank you.
Thanks,
yeah, and we really only... And we have plenty more to say. So there were some other... I wanted to... Before we leave, there was... there were in one of the comments, there was in the prequel idea to the Bonanza episodes, there was reference made to the fact that Cartwright was a cat getting around with a bunch of different ladies, and that's why his kids are all different. So I wasn't
right,
I was informed I was informed of that he was a bit of a tomcat. And
you had Little Joe and Hoss were definitely didn't look anything like. Obviously, they were different actors, but they were made to. Normally, they can like the Brady Bunch. They actually get actors that look similar to each other to play the role.
It turns out that was part of the actual reason was that that is part of the story or script was that he was an alley cat. He was basically let's just say he was a social farmer. Sowing a seed.
Sowing a seed.
So yeah.
Left, right,
all right,
center.
man. So let's send the bot out. Have a good night, bot.
Yeah.